Hi, welcome back. In this video, I want to show you how to draw this realistic leopard using charcoal and pit pastel on a toned gray paper. So let's get started. So these are the art supplies I'm going to use for this drawing, and you can pause the video right here to note them down. So I'm already done with this rough outline, and you can find all the references including this outline grid reference on my Patreon profile. Link is in the description. I recently bought this Strathmore's 400 series toned gray sketch paper, and the dimensions are 11 x 14 inches with the thickness of 118 GSM, which is thinner than my liking, but still my experience with this one has been really fascinating. As this was my first time with charcoal, I did some practice and experiments before starting the drawing, and I also did a short live drawing session on my vlogging channel. You can find that video from the cards or in the end screen. So starting from the left side, and first of all I'm gonna use this medium grade charcoal pencil and roughly fill all the black spots. You can use this faded line technique to fill the areas, as it will give the dark spots a realistic look in the end. And also make sure you keep the direction of the hairs in mind when adding these faded lines in a specific portion. You don't need to press too hard for the first layer. Just make sure you don't blow the excess charcoal powder away from the paper, as it will help you with the blending and shading process later. Now use your dry brush and lightly blend the dark portions and shade the in-between portions with the help of this excess charcoal powder on the paper. Just like this. You can skip this second layering and move on to the white pencil part, because I was just experimenting with the paper. Now use your sharp tip white pastel and fill the white portions with these thin hair or lines. Make sure you add these type of lines with both the ends faded, and keep the tip of your pencil sharp at all times during this process. And by the way, the real-time version of this tutorial is available on my Patreon profile. So if you want to see all these details up close and in real time, you can visit my Patreon profile. Link is in the description. Now use a small dry brush to lightly blend or smudge these starting portions of these white lines. Don't blend the whole line or white portions too heavily like I did here, or else you will have to add them again. Now for the dark black hair in the dark portions, just sharpen your pencil to a thicker tip like this, and then use a sandpaper or any rough surface to give it a chisel tip like this. And then use this chisel tip charcoal pencil to add these thin and sharp hair in the darker portions. Just like this. And then use your white pencil again to add or extend the white hairs in between, and also add these bigger white hair in the black portion like this. Now moving on to the eye, and first of all I'm gonna darken the outline using a sharp tip charcoal pencil, and use the excess charcoal powder from the outline to shade the inner portions using a small dry brush. Then use your white pencil and shade this inner white portion or sclera. You can further darken this upper left portion using charcoal pencil and dry brush if required, and add the pupil using a sharp tip charcoal. And in the end, use your white pencil to add these highlights or reflection on top of it. You can make further adjustments if required using a small dry brush with charcoal powder from your sandpaper. You can repeat the similar shading and highlighting process in this area below the eye as I did for the upper portions, and also add these long thick hairs or whiskers using white pencil. I'm gonna repeat the exact same shading process for the right eye as I did for the left one. The only difference is in the highlights and the iris texture, which you can easily add using a sharp tip white pencil and a mini dry brush. Just like this. This area around the right eye has extra bright white hairs, which you can add by only using this white pencil. Okay, now moving on to the nose portion, and first of all I'm gonna make some charcoal powder with my sandpaper, and then use this powder with a dry brush to add a dark base for the nose portion, and then use your white pencil with a sharp tip and fill this portion with these small and thin white hairs. But make sure you keep the direction of the hairs in mind when adding them, and don't add big, long and straight hairs in this portion. Now you don't need to smudge or blend them at this point, or else you will have to add them again later. Just use your chisel tip charcoal pencil and add these tiny thin black hair in between the white ones, especially in the darker areas. Now use the smallest brush you have and lightly blend the darker areas. Again, don't smudge them too hard or else you will have to add them again. I'm adding the white hairs again in this area because I blended them in the start, but you are good to go. And for the tip of the nose, just fill the darker portions and outlines with charcoal first and also lightly shade the inner part with the same charcoal pencil. You can do this with your dry brush and charcoal powder if you want. Now use your white pencil and lightly fill this middle portion with white shade like this. And then use your charcoal pencil with a mini brush to add these details and texture on the nose. And extend these white hairs or fur over the nose using your white pencil. Now for the remaining portion, I'm gonna repeat this similar shading process like I did previously. Just fill the darker portions with dark faded lines like this, and also keep in mind the direction of hair in any specific portion. And then use your dry brush with excess charcoal powder to shade these white portions in between. And then use your white pencil with a sharp tip to fill the white portions with these extra bright white hairs. Again, keep the direction of the hairs in mind when you are adding them, especially these curvy hair near the nose. And by the way, if you are a beginner and want to learn the basics of drawing first, you can join my course on Udemy. I put my course on sale for up to 90% off for 5 days of every month. You can check the link in the description to see if the sale is going on right now and get enrolled as soon as possible. Okay, now use your chisel tip charcoal pencil to add these dark black hair in the dark spots and add these light black hairs near the nose portion. And in the end, you can use your white pencil to further brighten the white areas which look dull or flat. And repeat the similar shading process for this area in the background. And make sure you blend it more than usual to make it look dull and blurred. And add these sharp white hairs for the chin portion, followed by a dark layer of black hair in these dark spots, just like this. And in the end, use your chisel tip charcoal to add these thin black whiskers around the mouth portion. And then add these white thick whiskers using your white pencil. And with this last step, we are done with this realistic leopard drawing. Make sure you preserve your drawing using a charcoal fixative like this to prevent any accidental smudging. It takes so much time and efforts to create these tutorials, so please leave a like if you enjoyed this one and share it with your friends. It really helps me a lot as an artist. So if you want to get the real-time tutorial of this drawing, you can visit my Patreon profile. And if you want to learn the basics of drawing first, you can join my course on Udemy. All the links are in the description down below. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.